Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about this ongoing Afghan peace process. There were reports that the Taliban Council has agreed to ceasefire, but there were certain other reports in which they have denied this. Now, what exactly is the current situation on ground? That is something we will be talking about. And other than that, obviously, another huge issue which was there as well in the previous election when Hamid Karzai, when Hamid Karzai was the president, but then later on there was this election held, Abdullah versus Ashraf Ghani. They both were competing and eventually there was kind of a tie. And both were saying that they have won the election. And eventually, if you remember, Mr. John Kerry, then the Secretary of State visited Afghanistan and he created a new post for Abdullah Saab. And he eventually became the CEO of Afghanistan, whereas Ashraf Ghani was given the appointment of the president. Now again, in the next election, which was recently held, the result wasn't shown or wasn't in fact shared with the general public. But eventually we got to know that there was a lot of problem. This is what Abdullah says. He says around 300,000 votes were bogus and unaccounted for, and the total, when you look at the number of people who in fact went out and what was that turnout was so low. But despite that, now Ashraf Ghani has been made the president once again for the second term, yet the conflict still exists. We'll also be talking about the the peace prospects in the future, where exactly it is heading, what sort of areas have they agreed upon, where there seems to be some sort of a problem and how will they go about it. Now this is going to be the major area of discussion in our today's program. Let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio. On my right is Dr. Mahmood Saab. He's a senior columnist, senior journalist. Thank you very much, sir. And we have with us Bashir Wali Mohammed Saab. Again, needs no introduction. He is a senior analyst and is also the former DGIB. Thank you very much, sir. Welcome. And we have with us Javed Sadiq Saab. Again, needs no introduction. He's a senior anchor person, as also a senior journalist and a columnist, sir. Thank you very much. Now, Nazir Mahmood Saab, starting from you, sir. There was this report that the Taliban Council, they have agreed to ceasefire. Now, obviously, if they have agreed, I'm sure on the other hand, the Americans must have also, engaged them into some other details and might have agreed upon certain of their demands as well. Now, sir, at the same time, we also hear that the Taliban, they have refused regarding the ceasefire. What is the exact situation as we speak, sir? What exactly is going on out there? Is there any peace process?
Well, the latest is that Taliban have denied that they have agreed to any ceasefire. This is just a couple of hours back. I just checked the news. So I think there was a bit of exaggeration in their showing that they were willing to ceasefire. So if that is true, as I say that, a couple of hours back they have denied it, if that is true, then I think again we are back to square one.
Yeah.
And the situation is almost the same which was in September when President Trump called off the negotiations. So now to understand the situation, I think we have to have a quick look at what has been happening during the past 4 months. Now, from September, when Zalmay Khalilzad announced that the agreement was almost ready, and that meant what? That meant that Taliban had agreed to participate in the government, and American and Zalmay Khalilzad and Trump. But then suddenly there were some blasts in which American soldiers were killed, and then they simply, President Trump on 8th of September said that no, the talks are dead. So that happened on the 8th of September. Now after that, a couple of things have happened. I would like to point out to 2 or 3 important developments. 2 developments were regarding the release of detainees on both sides. First, there were Indian engineers who were kidnapped by the Taliban, and then there were negotiations, and the NATO forces or America, or the Afghan government, they decided to release some Taliban commanders.
Okay.
And that happened in October, right? And then after that, quite recently, there was another exchange of prisoners between the Taliban and the Afghan government. And the Haqqani group's second in command, Anas Haqqani, has been released now by the Afghan government. And in return, the Taliban have released two professors, one American professor and the other Australian professor.
Australian, yeah.
And they were non-combatant prisoners. They were not soldiers, and they were in Taliban custody for past couple of years. So that showed what? That showed that though the talks were dead, but still there were negotiations going on. Otherwise, they could not have reached that agreement to release each other's prisoners. This is one. Secondly, on the 28th of November, President Trump on Thanksgiving Day went to Afghanistan very secretly, and at night only for a couple of hours, for 4 or 5 hours, I think. And then after that, he announced that we are ready to negotiate once again. This was last month. Now, after that, presidential elections results were announced. Now, these elections are very important because they will have impact on what is going to happen now. On one side, the major change is that Abdullah is totally out. Previously, he held that position of chief executive.
And we have heard that even when he was the CEO, so many major ministers used to report to him instead of Ashraf Ghani.
He was like a prime minister or semi-prime minister, but now he is out of the negotiation.
Do you believe that his influence, which he earlier had during the previous government, doesn't exist anymore now?
I think no. Yes.
Okay. So the absolute power is going to be with the President Ashraf Ghani.
That's what I am pointing out.
Okay.
Plus, there is another important personality now, Vice President, new Vice President. Who's this? His name is Amrullah Saleh. Now, this Amrullah Saleh, who has been elected as Vice President.
Was he the person who was the head of the intelligence?
Yes, previously.
Okay.
NDS, and he also belonged to the North.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes, and he also belonged to the Northern Alliance group previously. Remember this Tiger of Panjshir Valley, this Ahmad Shah Massoud group.
Yeah.
So he belonged to that. And as we know that now that group Pakistan has never had, and they have never had good working relationships with Pakistan. And that person is aggressive. Even if now Ashraf Ghani wants to improve the situation, I think this Amrullah Saleh is not a good sign. Amrullah Saleh, if his past history is any guide, probably he may create some obstacles in the process.
For even his own president?
Well, I'm not saying for the president, but for the negotiations. So he might be exerting his own influence.
Is this man under some sort of the influence of the Indians or RAW in general? Because sir, we have heard that when he was in charge and looking after the affairs of NDS, I mean, there were so many consultants, so many military officers of the RAW who were present in Afghanistan and practically guiding them what to do. So if this man was under that kind of an influence, I mean, he is no good.
Yes, and that's right. He not only Amrullah Saleh, traditionally Northern Alliance always had a soft corner towards India rather than Pakistan.
Because of the Taliban primarily, because we supported them during that war.
Yes. And the Northern Alliance was the one when America invaded. Northern Alliance was the one that fought with Americans against the Taliban. So this is not a good omen. The presence of Amrullah Saleh, I don't see as.
But I think that is their problem. Let's see. What can he deliver? If he can't deliver, then there should be another person. But he is going to be the real bone of contention, I would say, sir. Now, Mohammed Sir, first of all, sir, the current scenario, one soldier I remember was killed and the peace talks were called off by the Americans. Now, there are two schools of thoughts. One says that because the elections for the American president, I mean, these are really important, and since he is committed on so many fronts and he has to deliver. The impeachment issue is really huge for him. It can backfire. God knows what's going to happen. But it seems that he's going to get away with it. But still, there's going to be that impression, attached with him throughout. Secondly, sir, when you talk about the commitment regarding Afghanistan, this man said that we will withdraw forces, but eventually the number was increased slightly, but still there's a confusion going on. Whether the Americans will stay or will they go out, because the Taliban demands are very clear. They want every single American, every single foot soldier present on the Afghan soil should go back. Is this what is going to happen? And if this is not going to happen because the exchange of prisoners or for that matter some other minute issues, they can be sorted out. But the Americans, I think they mean business and they will stay there. Is that the major issue now, sir? For the reason that they've called off this ceasefire agreement, sir?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What my friend has said, these are the ground realities, what we have seen in the past, say about a couple of months. But at the same time, the Americans are also, they are as you have said, determined. Trump, by all means, he wants to be out of Afghanistan. He wants. Whether that happens or not is a question mark. We saw what has happened in Libya. We have seen what has happened in Iraq, now in Syria. Then the activities of the Soviet, the Russian, Putin, the Chinese, So it's a very big game going on. It's not only, as you have very rightly said, that this exchange of this X, Y, Z, that means nothing. The Taliban, they have a sizable number.
What is that sizable number, sir, which is giving so much problem
Yes.
to the so-called the most advanced, most technically correct, well-equipped military of the world, sir?
Well, I would say that it's the people of Afghanistan. They are determined, and as you have yourself said, that they want that every American, or for that matter, every foreign troops, they should be out of Afghanistan. They don't want them. And they are determined. Again, let me tell you that they are determined. Well, I had some personal this thing also, meetings. I won't call them meeting, but I belong to that part of the world. I've served there. Haqqani, I've met his brothers, they were part of that jirga. They were here, I think the last month or the month before, our late DGI General Hamid Gul's wife died.
Yeah.
There was a sizable representation of these people who were here. So it is the people of Afghanistan. And to them, Afghanistan is very dear. They don't want any foreign this thing. And this was one of the factor. When the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, based on which we took on, and we got into all this rut. And finally we saw that the Soviet Union had to leave the country. This was one. So it's the people. Secondly, it's the terrain. Irrespective of the technology that we may call, this technology was there with the Russian also. Almost the same stuff. Then later on we saw...
Now, sir, they hardly use their ground troops. I mean, this concept of eye in the sky, that is doing everything.
Imagine, we should see one thing, that the American with over 150,000 troops, Americans plus the NATO, they could not control, and they were lying all the time. We saw the American media, they came out with it, that they never controlled.
Sir, this is the longest war the Americans have fought. And interestingly, you talk about weapons. Let's talk about the the mother of all bombs that was dropped in Afghanistan, close to the border of Pakistan. And then all sorts of weapons. I mean, they have practically... Afghanistan was a test ground, sir.
It is.
That is what I'm saying. So was Iraq, so is Syria now.
Yes, they have been doing it. All sorts of weapons they have tested there. It is still going on. But the people of Afghanistan, to them, it is their land. And if you know your terrain, in any guerrilla warfare, we did only...
You have an edge, definitely.
You have an edge. We did one stupidity when, our General Hamid Gul, he was the DGI, and he decided abruptly from guerrilla warfare, and he switched over to a conventional warfare, and he fucked it up, in Jalalabad. So that is there. So it is the people, their love, for their country. It is the terrain that they
use it for their own
so they can
advantage.
fight it out.
Yeah.
And Americans, we saw that if they with over 150,000 troops could not control more than 40% of Afghanistan for all this decade, so how do we or anybody for that matter expect that they will be able to control with those 13,000, 14,000, whatever the figure is. So that is, and to them, even if the American, again, if we come down, he is interested that before his election, he must give something to his nation, and that he wants to get out. But will the Taliban, these people would allow him to, like the Soviet Union, when they went, you know, the Americans and everybody came into for their rescue. We had this Ojri camp debacle and all that stuff. It is all linked. So
In one way or the other,
we have to keep all these things. And I suppose, as my friend has already said, when I read this news, that, you know, they will never, there are so many groups, even groups within groups, you know.
There's so many factions. So you believe that
area.
most of the factions, I mean, there is a council which is negotiating, Javed Saab, at a higher level, whether you talk about Doha talks or you talk about any other sort of an engagement between the two parties, anywhere in the world, sir. And there have been so many rounds of talks. Eventually, either it seems that the process is very slow, or maybe the demands on either side, they are not acceptable to each other. That could be another issue. Now, if you remember, sir, on Sunday, there was a story of, as you earlier mentioned, that they've agreed upon a conditional ceasefire. Now, the report is of today that agreeing, I mean, they said the Taliban on Monday, today, it denied agreeing of any ceasefire in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Sir.
You know, it's a very complex process. I don't think it is going to be an easy ball game. You know, there will be reverses in this process of negotiations to reach the ultimate settlement, political settlement of the crisis in Afghanistan. And we have witnessed in the last 1 year at least, there were so many rounds of talks. Some of these talks were held in Islamabad. Pakistan hosted these talks.
Yes,
China
sir.
was also a part of these talks.
Sir.
And then Doha talks. And, you know, the venues have been changing from time to time. But this is not going to be an easy run. I think there could be so many other setbacks to these talks in the coming days. And probably the Taliban are looking for an advantageous position from which they could negotiate with the NATO and the American troops. But one factor is very important, and that is the President of the United States of America, who has a huge stake in this process. And he has already announced that he wants to get out of Afghanistan, and he has promised to his electorate. And probably that's the reason that that gives me an optimism that the Americans are trying desperately to reach an agreement with the Taliban.
So when you say Americans, now Javed Saab, there is another very interesting point of view, and that is that the White House and the Pentagon, they have got major differences over this issue, sir. Maybe the president wants to withdraw, but the Pentagon, they have their own interest there in Afghanistan, sir, and they're reluctant to move out.
That could be a possibility. I mean, there are some analysis which assert that some American troops will remain in Afghanistan. I mean, what is the number? 5,000, 6,000 or whatever.
The support staff primarily.
Yes, they will be there. The air bases which are being run and operated by the Americans in Afghanistan will also be in Afghanistan for quite some time in
Gram
that
Air Base, I
country.
mean, one of the largest in the world at the
And
moment.
there could be a ceasefire. I mean, if there's a ceasefire in Afghanistan, the attacks stop on each other and some withdrawal
Sir, if
of
there is
troops.
peace in Afghanistan and there's nothing happening, then what's the purpose of keeping the American forces?
You know,
Because they came here to bring in peace and to primarily take care of the Taliban government. They've done that.
Now the things are revealing themselves, and it is now becoming abundantly clear that the Americans have strategic interest in this region. They have China, they have Iran, and there are other forces,
Yeah,
even,
Pakistan,
even
Russia,
and
they have the
Pakistan.
Central Asian countries,
So
yes.
they want to keep an eye on these countries and the developments that are taking place in this region. So they're not going to go away lock, stock and barrel. They will keep some troops, some bases in Afghanistan. That is the consensus among all the analysts who are watching and who are basically analyzing Afghanistan. So some troops would be there. But the major achievement for the for the Trump administration or the President Trump himself would be that there's a ceasefire in Afghanistan. The attacks are not being carried out against each other, and so that he could sell something to the people back in America, because next year, which is only a day away, there will be the election year in America. So he wants to give something to the people, and he wants to show to them that he has carried out the promise that he had made during the election campaign. So the Americans are very keen. Zalme Khalilzad is always in the air, dashing from one place to other, trying his desperate to reach some some settlement with the Taliban. But obviously, it's not going to be an easy job. And given the history of Afghans, they're very intractable people. They can't be managed so easily. And do you remember that when initially, when the Soviet Union withdrew its troops from Afghanistan, a Peshawar Accord was reached,
Yep.
which was again not carried out in deterrent spirit, and there was civil war and strife in Afghanistan, and an accord was made among various fighting factions of Afghanistan in Khana Kaaba, and even that was not carried out. That was violated.
Whose mistake was that, sir?
All the groups, and everybody was trying to be in power. They were jockeying for power. So we must keep this history in mind. Therefore, it is not going to be an easy thing.
Sir,
And
before I move on to Dr. Saab,
yeah.
you really believe that the Taliban are not only aiming at getting some sort of power, but they are aiming at getting in the absolute power, sir?
Yeah, because the history and the time is on the side of Taliban. They have been able to control the major part of Afghanistan, and it seems that they have militarily an edge over the foreign troops and the government troops as well. So Ashraf Ghani and all these people who have been in power for quite some time, and before that Hamid Karzai, they were unable to resist Taliban or to eliminate their influence or actually militarily defeat them. And the recent report, which has been released by the US, clearly indicates that the American generals were lying to the people of America, the American citizens, and they were hiding so many facts about this war,
yes,
because they were losing on the ground, and they were telling a different story to the people, selling a different story to the people. So it is now very clear that the Taliban have gained a lot of advantage and confidence vis-a-vis the foreign troops. So they're very confident that they might be able to get a bigger share than the world thinks that they can get.
Now, the point is still you're talking about the bigger share. Now, imagine if Taliban had fielded their candidates for the election, sir. You think they would have been able to gauge themselves at certain level that this is where we stand? 10%, 15% votes or whatever. That's how we do it in Pakistan, that, PMLN got these many votes, People's Party, and then PTI, whatever. But a lot of people believe that most of the Afghan people do not support the Taliban. There is a faction which does. They have some sort of ground support also in certain regions, certain particular areas where they always had strength and an edge. But sir, this is believed that if you're talking about democracy, the election, if you're looking at that sort of an apparatus, to gauge their strength, they do not have that kind of a power.
Well, this is the real question. Who is representing the people of Afghanistan? The Ashraf Ghani government tries to say that, all along for the past 20 years, first Hamid Karzai and then Ashraf Ghani, they have been trying to prove that they are the representatives. Now, if they are the representative of the people, they are controlling less than half of Afghanistan. more than half of Afghanistan, and this is not Taliban claim, this is independently verifiable
Even
fact.
certain sources says more than 60%.
Yes,
60%,
even
yes.
60% is under Taliban control.
Yep.
So this, the claim that these elections were held all over Afghanistan, these were very dubious elections. Why? Because if the government, Ashraf Ghani government was not controlling most of Afghanistan, where were the elections held? Probably only in the areas that were controlled by the government. They could not go into the Taliban area, and Taliban anyway boycotted the elections.
And plus the 300,000 bogus votes and such a low turnout.
Yes. So, and even then, the claim, the final results, it shows that Ashraf Ghani won by not even 51%. It was 50.6%, not even 51%. So
So the claim of Abdullah is very valid.
well, he's also claiming. So now the point is that if they are not, neither the Ashraf Ghani government is represented, and then let me clarify that even Taliban, if they claim that they are representing, I don't agree with that also, because people want peace. If they are controlling 60 or 70% Afghanistan, that does not mean that they are, Taliban are, just like Ashraf Ghani is not representing the people of Afghanistan, Taliban are also not representing the people of Afghanistan, because that can be verified only when Taliban participate in the elections, and somehow
Do they have a concept of a hung government there as well, sir?
well, if they participate in election, then there will be hung parliament or
Two-party system or two-man system, let's put it this way, sir. I mean, the two men, primarily, most of the people, they do believe that a lot of people did not come out to vote this year was primarily because it was Ashraf Ghani again and Abdullah. So they haven't made any difference during the previous 5 years. So what will change now? That was their point of view.
well, I mean, this, why there were not many candidates? Because I think it was pre-planned and pre-decided. The occupying forces, NATO and America, they wanted, just like previously, they wanted Hamid Karzai to continue for at least 2 terms, and Hamid Karzai was supported.
Yeah.
So this time also, probably occupying, that is America, United States, they did not have any other suitable candidate. Probably they are grooming this Amrullah Saleh, which I don't think will be possible. But they had no other choice. So they, just like Hamid, I think it was an action replay of what they did with Hamid Karzai. Those elections were also sham elections.
Indeed.
Again, but they installed Hamid Karzai and he continued. So similarly, they wanted Ashraf Ghani to continue somehow. That's why these sham elections were held. No details were given. First, they probably tried to negotiate with Abdullah, whatever. They did not agree. Abdullah wanted himself to be president. So anyway, now the final outcome is that Ashraf Ghani is going to stay there. Unless Taliban have the military strength to occupy Kabul and evict him, which is not possible, I think. So Abdullah, now what Taliban need to do, your question regarding what will happen. I see 2 possibilities here. One possibility is, of course, everybody knows that the situation will carry on like this. That means Taliban will not agree to ceasefire, they will keep attacking.
So it's going to stay the way it is.
So this is one possibility, which is not a good option. It is a bad option, because already so many people have been killed. Estimates vary. Some say 50,000, 60, or at least some say 100,000. Anyway, American soldiers, only 2,300 American soldiers have been killed. So Afghan people are on the losing side, they are being killed. What should happen? I think Taliban should realize now, because America somehow initially also agreed to a couple of conditions, just like Taliban wanted the Ashraf Ghani government to be kept out of the negotiations. So America agreed and Zalmay Khalilzad started negotiating. So that was a big concession. Now I think the ball is in Taliban court. For the sake of peace in Afghanistan, I think Taliban should not insist on keeping this attacks on. They should, I think, announce a ceasefire so that some negotiation can be held. Otherwise, this is a deadlock. This will carry on, and this is not good for the people of Afghanistan.
Now, Mohammed Saab, even the Taliban, they very clearly, they have said that intra-Afghan dialogue is only possible, even the intra-Afghan dialogue, once the US troops will withdraw. Now, their primary problem seems to be that they want withdrawal, and this is where the problem seems to be. And the Americans, they have given them assurances that, you do this and we will gradually, withdraw our troops. But sir, obviously history is there and in particular when you talk about Donald Trump. I remember this P5+1 deal was the deal of the century. Javed sir, this is what we used to
With
hear.
Iran.
And everybody would appreciate Barack Obama and his wisdom that, see, this man has done it. All were, I think the best negotiations ever were conducted by none other than Mr. Jawad Zarif, the foreign minister of Iran. Everything reversed, back to not only square one. This is entire Iran, more sanctions, and you have seen whatever has happened during that time period. There is another major issue with the Taliban, so that is about the trust deficit. They do not trust the Americans, and in particular, they do not trust Donald Trump. And they know once, if they are withdrawing, from a certain demand for that matter, the Taliban I'm talking about, they know that it is not going to have a happy ending, sir.
Well, as far as this question of trust, as you said, you are very right. They don't trust him. It's not only that they only don't trust him, but imagine what the Americans, with all, forget about their might and what their weapons and all that stuff that they have on the ground.
Oh yeah, the kind of firepower the Americans have.
They're the firepower. But they have totally failed. They have failed to deliver with the might that they have on the ground. And even the diplomacy part, if you take, if they understand, and they should understand, if we are discussing the issue right while sitting here, that they don't trust the Donald Trump. So do you think that Donald Trump doesn't understand that they don't trust him? The person who is shuttling between, let's say, US and Afghanistan, who is that person?
Salve Khalilzad.
Exactly. And they just don't trust him. I don't know whether it is from this forum that I said once, or maybe some other,
Sir, forget about Zalmay Khalilzad. The Taliban authorities do not even trust Ashraf Ghani. They believe that he's a stooge of the Americans, who's been once again planted as a president of...
There is no doubt about it. But as far as the instrument which the Americans are using, is not Ashraf Ghani. He's just told, do this and...
But sir, he is the president for the next term in Afghanistan.
Okay, he's the president, but president with what? As far as the Taliban are concerned, let me quote one of the person, and the person is not an ordinary person that I am referring to, brother of Akani. The force which really a potent threat to them, they are exploiting Afghanistan right. According to him, what is Khalilzadeh? He said, Khalilzadeh should prove to us that he is Afghan. They do not even accept him as Afghan. And
because he is the American representative here, sir.
Exactly.
Not the Afghan.
So is there, but he's basically shuttling between this just because he's Afghan. It's not you, it's not me that is shuttling between the two countries. According to them, he said he is just like, Ganda kutta mara hua. These were the words.
The dead, dirty dog.
Put him in the well, or usi well se, if you take out 2,000 or 5,000 buckets of water, throw the water outside, leave that dead body over there of that dead dog.
You need to take the dog out of the well, sir.
It means nothing. The water will remain dirty. So that is the love and respect that they have for that man. That is now the problem, that all these parties...
Taliban will never accept Ashraf Ghani as the president of Afghanistan, sir?
No.
So the problem stays on?
Exactly. The problem... Unfortunately, we people fail, when we visualize, when we analyze Afghanistan, we, in the Western context, or even to some context in our own, although we also have a different system, They have no, like we have said that this will happen. Yes, this will happen. What we are trying to think and suggest to them, they don't believe. They don't believe. What is democracy? They don't believe. It's a tribal society, not 1, 2, 3. And you have very rightly said that whether it is Taliban.
So-called democracy is forced upon the social setup of the Taliban.
No, they don't. You know, democracy, what we, like you would say that the female folk will be free to move around, let's say, because in any democratic state, this is one of the, especially, the Western countries, if you take them, there will be so many things that they will forget about that, but they will stuck to this issue. And this is one of the issues that they will never agree to it. Just no question. Okay. So there are very difficult, as my friend has very rightly said, there are a lot of issues, if and but. And mind you, that with all that, the Americans, they have started shifting their troops from 150,000. They have come down to about 13,000, 14,000 only. And now if you look at the war zone, what is happening? Instead of reducing the tension, it is increasing every day. They are striking all the places, major places, which
On their own will.
on their own. And
the
imagine
best part.
the Air Force, like you have said, we have discussed that the air base is this, they will go, but the Air Force, just no question. They have already gone.
Either you leave or you don't.
They are throwing those feelers. They have gone for Bagram, the most important air base. Well,
And the most protected and well guarded.
Got it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
It's just sheer coincidence, you can call it. I've seen it myself during war. What is Bagram by itself? So they have gone. They had whatever they wanted. And casualties mean nothing to them. Okay, we say that this casualty, that casualty, it means nothing. You talk to them. Every month at least, when I'm in Peshawar, so they are there and we talk very openly, and they have never talked on this subject, that this casualty or that casualty. No. So it is a very difficult phenomena, and now we are forgetting one very important aspect, that initially it was the American. Then of course initially it was the Russian. They were thrown out. The American helped them, that they should be able to extricate.
Don't you think that when the Americans are present there, the Russians are helping the Taliban? Isn't it, sir?
No, yes.
They have had so many meetings with Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, sir.
Even China.
Even China.
No, these meetings they keep, like, my friend has said, you are
Sir,
saying
I think Vladimir Putin is a much more intelligent person
Exactly.
than I am, but even if I was approached by the Taliban, and if I had to take revenge of the Americans, I would have kept them here for another 200
he
years.
is doing it. He is doing it.
That's what he's doing.
Like we were talking about Ahmad Shah Massoud. He was this, is this. I had personal, at least if not 3 or 4 meetings with him, and he had to come to meet me in Chitral. Early 70s, I'm talking. So these, what we call it, track to on salt line, this is okay. It will continue, these track to, these
So we should not expect too much too soon.
Exactly.
All right.
We should not expect too much too soon.
Javed sir.
And we should try also, we should try to understand that we should also not poke our nose into their, let them, we should. Like we have this, our gentleman, our foreign minister,
Shah Mahmood Sahab.
Shah Mahmood Sahab. Well, to me, he doesn't believe me. He doesn't know the ABC of Afghan. But every second day he's there. They will not listen to him. Believe me. I mean, if you listen to them, it's a different word. And now, with the introduction and with the involvement of the Chinese,
things are different
the
on
Americans were doing everything, financial aspect. Now it is the Chinese. They have, link now with the Soviet Union.
Right. So one very important question which I always wanted to ask. Javed Sahab, these Taliban, I mean, they can't have the ammunition for the next 20,000 years, obviously. But if they are attacking, if they are planning, obviously that they have some very, I would say, genius minds working for them. Do you believe, sir, they have some foreign support also? I mean, if they have been able to engage the Americans for 18 long years, and the Americans, they can trace everything down, sir, from the sky. They don't need even a single individual on the ground. How is it possible?
Primarily, I believe the Taliban's have depended on the will to fight, the will to survive. And exactly the same happened.
But sir, that will has to be supported by some sort of
no. But you know,
weapon
the will
or
to
some
fight,
assets.
the will to fight is very important, and that's what the Taliban's have a lot of it, and that is keeping them on the ground and fighting the superpower, the sole superpower of the world. Previously, they had fought the Red Army, the Soviet troops, with the same zeal and the same devotion and the same spirit, and they threw them out of Afghanistan. Obviously, they were being supported by the US, Pakistan, Arab world, and probably many other Western countries. Even China was supporting them at that time. But that happened. So this is the second time that they are facing a superpower, a power that has a tremendous military might. And you know, when initially this Operation Endurance started in Afghanistan, 18 years back maybe, the soldier that was portrayed, the American soldiers who was being portrayed in the press, in the media, they said that this soldier is equipped with the most ultra-modern technology.
The American soldier?
Yes.
$100,000 worth of
per
equipment.
soldier, and the
Seal,
equipment
naval seal.
Every year.
and equipment that he's carrying. So they were very confident that they would eliminate all the inimical forces to America and NATO, and within years, Afghanistan will be clear. There will be no resistance. We will be able to implement our democracy project in Afghanistan. There will be prosperity, there will be democracy, and Afghanistan will be transformed into a modern state. That was the dream which was being given to the world. And probably they were ignoring so many realities on the ground, and they didn't have the experience of fighting in such a difficult terrain, which is advantageous to Taliban, and which is on the side of Taliban. And Taliban are very familiar with this geography and terrain, and this geography and terrain has supported Taliban in Afghanistan for centuries, and they have taken full advantage of that. So that is why they have not been able to eliminate Taliban militarily. They are there resisting, fighting. But the neighboring countries like Pakistan, maybe Iran and others, would like Afghanistan to be a peaceful country. Yes, the Western kind of democracy, the Western brand of democracy is not conceivable in Afghanistan given its history, its background, its tribal nature of the country. We can't expect a Westminster-like democracy in Afghanistan. But certainly, Afghanistan should move forward, and they should try to bring stability and peace in Afghanistan. They have been fighting among each other for the last 40 years. Hundreds of thousands of Afghanistan.
It is believed that, the interesting part is that Afghan people are at peace when they're at war. So you can well imagine.
So I think they have lost a huge number of people, men, women, and children, and now they deserve peace for a certain period of time.
And I hope
that's
the
all.
regional countries should work for peace rather than their own personal interest and gains. That is unfortunately the case.
Yeah, but I think Pakistan is very keen, and we should be. They are our brethren, neighboring countries.
All right, sir.
And we want peace and stability in Afghanistan, and we will be probably the biggest gainer from this. Pakistan will gain
We have been the
lot.
biggest sufferer so far, but if there is peace, we'll be the biggest gainers. But anyway,
Thank you.
Javed Sahab, thank you very much for your time, sir. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Dr. Sahab. And that's all we have for this. I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.